Thank you. So, first of all, my name is Stephen Hall. I'm the project manager for the Farmington Canal Heritage Trails. First and foremost, I want to thank you all for coming out. The number one thing we need tonight is feedback. Positive or negative means nothing to us. It's feedback from you all. So we've heard some great discussions over the past couple hours. We met with the residents in Henningray last week. I'll just go ahead and say we've heard you. We've had scribes going around this whole time recording comments. We'll also have a QR code to record comments online, as well as there's a handout for written comments. We'll have the email address up, we'll have the phone number. There's no wrong way to submit comments. Before we get into this, I'm going to ask Manager Pollitt to come up and say a few words, and then we'll get into the formal presentation.
Good evening, and thank you, Stephen. Mike Paulus, Town Manager. I want to welcome everyone to this public informational meeting. I think this is an opportunity for everyone to be heard and for you to get some answers to the questions you have. And tonight is the night. This is a process that is still evolving. It is what I like to refer to as an evaluation or evaluation mode. And so it's important that you leave your comments with DOT. And if, for whatever reason, you don't have that information, reach my office, we'll be happy to assist. But I think this is a trail process that's been long in the making, going back to the COG's involvement to 2018, maybe even prior to that, in the gap closure trail study. We're now at a point where phase 1 and phase 2 are designed complete, and for simplicity, we're trying to connect 2 points. From phase 1, phase 2, this is it. The alignment. Phase 3 is the most difficult, obviously, because we don't have, what we have is an active rail, and we don't have that opportunity to use a rail bed. So this makes it very complex. And I think there's no bad idea. So if you have a comment, you have a question, tonight is the night to do that. So I want to welcome DOT. I want to thank everyone for coming. And I think that the reason we're here, in terms of part of the reason we're here, is that the value that trails have in terms of enhancing the quality of life and enhancing communities. So I think the takeaway should be that you need to do it right? You need to figure out the most effective way to connect the 2 dots. And I think this is the start of that process, to hear from you tonight, to hear your concerns, to hear your questions. And with that, turning back to Stephen.
Great, thanks, Manager Paulus. Once again, I'm gonna put all these slides online. You can feel free to take pictures, but this will all be up probably tomorrow on the website, so you can go through, and any images you couldn't see clearly will be up on the website. And once again, once we're done with this presentation, we'll break back out into groups. Again, we have 9 scribes recording comments, and of course, any written comments. So some administrative things, Title VI, civil rights. No person shall on the basis of race, color, or national origin be excluded from participating or subject to discrimination in development of this project. There is a voluntary post-meeting survey. This, of course, again, will be online if you wish to complete that, and more civil rights information at that QR code and that link below. And this just goes into the civil rights a little bit more. We have a civil rights phone number, 594-2169, and more information can be found on there if need be. So this has been a joint effort, but to go through the DOT team first, the people you see up here, we've got Mike Calabrese, the division chief, Scott Bush, the principal engineer. Again, my name is Stephen Hall, the project manager, and joined with me is Bill Hogan, the project engineer, and Josh Giorgio, the project designer. We also have some support from landscape design, Matthew Berry. We have Zach Arana, who is our rights-of-way coordinator. And then we have Mark Jewell from VHB, who's been involved in this process for quite some time. And you've seen Krog up here before. We've done a lot of work with Krog as well in developing these alignments. So of course, we're here today to discuss the Farmington Canal Heritage Trail. Currently, there's 86 total miles from New Haven to Northampton, Massachusetts. It connects 11 towns in Connecticut, and the only gap that's not completed thus far is between Plainville and Farmington. It's also part of the East Coast Greenway, which is a 3,000-mile trail for walking and biking from Florida all the way to Maine. The purpose of these projects is to close the remaining 3-mile gap in the Farmington Canal Heritage Trail through Plainville. We have 3 projects up here, as Manager Paulus mentioned. We have Phase 1, Town Line Road to Norton Park. That's been awarded to a contractor. Construction will begin shortly. We have Phase 2, Project 109-176, Northwest Drive to Route 72. Design has been completed, and that will be put out to bid in the spring for a contractor. And then the discussion tonight would be Phase 3, still in the planning phase, trying to connect Norton Park to Route 72. So I mentioned our coordination with CROG. CROG did a gap closure study starting in 2016 that involved themselves, the CTDOT, Town of Plainville, Farmington, and the City of New Britain, as well as the Plainville Greenway Alliance. And of course, again, the goal was to close the last remaining gap in the Farmington Canal Heritage Trail. I show this graphic up here because this is a summary of all the public outreach that was done starting in 2016 to try and find an alignment. One of the reasons why this has not been completed is it's a very challenging gap to close. So we had 7 community meetings, 3 newsletters, a project website was created, 12 focus group meetings, 3 community events, 7 steering committee meetings, and 3 presentations to the town council. This is primarily before the DOT got involved. So we see these alignments up here from the CROG study. After that point, DOT got involved, looked at a few more. And here's just kind of an example of what the study showed, some different alignments, again, to try and connect that gap from Farmington through Plainville. And again, all these can be viewed on the board and they'll be up on the website as well. So a little background, it's easy to get confused with these projects. 109-175 is Phase 1. That's from Town Line Road up to Norton Park. It's primarily following the Farmington Canal Heritage Trail. That's the purpose of this, is to follow the Farmington Canal. In a lot of locations, it's been either maintained or restored, and we can really put that trail next to it. The downtown location, however, creates a whole other host of challenges. Construction is going to start in a couple of weeks here, December 18th, 2025. Likely won't see major construction activities in the spring. There are some time of year restrictions that prevent us from doing some of our wetland mitigation work. So we expect construction to be completed fall of 27, but the trail itself should be completed in the fall of 2026. We also have Phase 2 further to the north from Route 72 up to Northwest Drive. It avoids the majority of the wetlands, goes through Tomaso Nature Park, and skirts Carlin Technologies. Final design plans are April 1st, 2026. We essentially have these plans completed. We're going through the permit review process now, which is rather lengthy. We anticipate bid opening for contractors to bid on this project July 8th, 2026, and the anticipated construction start date is October 19th, 2026, with a 2-year duration. So the Phase 3 alignment, we're here today to talk about Phase 3. So the purpose and need would be to construct the remaining 1.7 miles of the Farmington Canal Heritage Trail multi-use trail in the town of Plainville, completing the connection between Phase 1 and Phase 2. And the goal here really is to provide a safe and accessible transportation facility for all non-motorized users, bikes, pedestrians, children and walkers, all types. There's also a goal to provide a spur connection from this Farmington Canal Heritage Trail to downtown Plainville. We're calling that the Spur Trail. So one of the topics that came up in our discussion at Hemingway is, what are the benefits for the adjacent property owners? Now, the purpose of this project is not to directly provide benefits to adjacent property owners, but there certainly are some. Manager Paul has mentioned community enhancement, economic drive. In 2019, a research study on 20 papers examined the impacts of multi-use trails on nearby property values. There were some outliers as high as 15%, but generally premiums rose from 3 to 5%. And this study took into consideration the proximity of these residences to the trail. So if it was adjacent to the trail, that was one category. If it was a half mile away, that was a different category. And this whole study is up on the website with all the sources on the website as well. But that's from Crampton and Nichols in 2019. So what we're looking at here is an overview of Phase 3. To the top left of your screen, you'll see Phase 1 in orange that ends at Norton Park. The solid yellow line is what we've been showing today primarily. That's the Hemingway alignment, Broad Street, Route 177, terminating up at Phase 3, which is the pink line. And then the spur trail would be that line coming to the bottom of the screen that connects to downtown Plainville. What I also have here are 2 dash lines. As I mentioned, we looked at about 20 alternatives. Nothing has been decided yet. This is simply another step in the process to look at alternatives and vet them out. You see on the top, we have the Hemingway Woods alignment. There's been a tremendous desire to put the trail back in the woods. One thing I've been trying to get out to the stakeholders, the property owners, is that the wetlands are a sensitive resource. The majority of that location is in wetlands. Even a boardwalk would have permanent wetland impacts, which would affect the flood mitigation, environmental species, carbon reduction, things of that nature. In order for us to really get anywhere with DEEP to entertain the idea of providing that alignment through the wetlands, we need to show that there's no other viable route to avoid those wetlands. So what we're doing here today is getting feedback on yet another alternative and determining its viability. And I'll mention, once again, you've all been heard. So we have a lot of feedback already, and that's very useful. That's useful for us to go to DEEP and say, here's our public outreach. If we were to simply go to DEEP and say, they're not gonna like that, that's not gonna be good enough. So we need to do our due diligence to first try and avoid environmental resources, then minimize the impacts of environmental resources, and if we cannot, mitigate the impacts of environmental resources. The dash line on the bottom that goes along Norton Park and up Route 177. We did a field walk actually 1 year ago today, where we had the town council and some stakeholders. We basically walked the proposed trail. We flagged out some locations. There was about a 2 or 3 foot property acquisition along Route 177. There were some concerns about the volume of traffic on that road. At the end of that field walk, it was requested by the town council that we look at the Hemingway alignment. So we took a walk down Hemingway and basically determined there was merit to fit a trail in width-wise based on the width of the road, and that's why we're here today. Another option, another alternative, another suggestion to look at a trail alignment to go down Hemingway Road. All right, this time I'm going to turn it over to Bill Hogan. He's going to be going through the specifics, the zoomed in images of the trail and the actual components of it.
Hey, thank you, Steve. Thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight. Your feedback is important. We've had a lot of good conversations, and we've definitely heard, and we've done our best to document all the discussions that are taking place tonight. So as far as design-wise, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to be presenting more of the ins and outs or the nitty-gritty of the design. Starting from Norton Park, so I'm going to start in the south, and then I'm going to work my way all the way north up to Route 72 or the project termini. Now, a lot of these graphics are down here below, but at least here we can kind of zoom in a little bit more, and I can kind of explain how everything is expected to fit in. So we're going to start here. We're in the south. We're at the start of the project limits. This is in Norton Park. Up at the top here, we have an existing parking lot and our tie-in to our Phase 1 trail connection. So the proposed design here includes constructing the 12-foot multi-use trail along the Farmington Canal here and continue north. This is a restored section of the Farmington Canal. So as part of our design, we're really going to have to look into specifically avoiding fill into that Farmington Canal because it's been a reestablished historic resource. From there, the trail continues and then it heads north up Hemingway Street, utilizing what's called as a side path. But before I get there, I just want to kind of show, and I'll do this with every single section. I'll show you what a typical section, so the cross section of the trail is going to look like, and then where we have them, just different renderings of how it will actually look when it's built. So here's that cross section of the trail in Norton Park. 12-foot trail, 2-foot snow shelf, and then just general grading adjacent to the canal and to the park. Here's Norton Park facing east, so we're heading facing kind of out towards Route 177. Here's the existing condition and the Farmington Canal on the left there. And here's a rendering of how that trail will look when it's actually constructed and built along the canal. Okay, so now we're going to continue north. So we just went from Norton Park. Now we're going to jump onto Hemingway Street. So the current configuration of Hemingway Street allows for two-way traffic in both directions, and there's available space for on-street parking. Additionally, there are sidewalks on both the east and west side of the roadway. And here's an overlay of the design itself on Hemingway. So the main design intent on Hemingway was to work within the existing sidewalk footprint that's there. So essentially, we wanted to make sure that our design stayed within the sidewalk to sidewalk limits. So in order to do that, we needed to reallocate some of the space on Hemingway, and this includes a 9-foot wide trail going up the, that is the east side of the roadway. And so here's a roadway cross-section of, Hemingway with this trail design. So we would have a 9-foot trail along the east side of the roadway, 3-foot grass buffer there, an 8-foot shoulder. That 8-foot shoulder is intended there to allow for on-street parking. 2 10-foot travel lanes, northbound, southbound, 1-foot shoulder, 4-foot grass buffer, and then we would rehab or replace the existing sidewalk network that was there. So. In order to do this, the existing roadway has to be narrowed. Currently, curb to curb, it's about 34 feet. And under this design, you end up with a curb to curb roadway of about 31 feet. And here we are on Hemingway Street. Now we're facing north. This is the existing condition. And here's the proposed rendering of the design on Hemingway Street facing north. So we have our trail on the east side of the roadway here. On-street parking mains here, our 2 10-foot lanes, and then the existing sidewalk on the other side of the road.
Are you gonna put those yellow lines down Hemingway?
Pavement markings?
Are you gonna put the yellow lines in the middle of Hemingway?
We could put pavement markings on Hemingway. But if you don't mind, sir, I'm going to get through all my slides here, and then we're going to come back into the open house forum and discuss, okay? I appreciate it. Okay, all right, so then continuing along Hemingway, the next roadway that we're going to be going on to is on the south side of Broad Street. This is going to utilize an 11-foot trail section, 5-foot grass buffer, 11-foot lanes. So basically, we're maintaining the same travel lane configuration on Broad Street as there is today, providing a 9-foot shoulder on the south side that's available for on-street parking. And then a 5-foot shoulder on the north side, and then maintaining the existing sidewalk network that's there. Again, very similar design concept here where we're looking to work within the existing curb-to-curb limits of the roadway. So the multi-use trail here on this side, the south side of the roadway, would not extend beyond the current sidewalk limits that are there today. So here's Broad Street facing east, existing condition. And here's the rendering of Broad Street facing east, existing proposed condition. So our 9-foot wide shoulder, 11-foot lanes, and then the existing sidewalk on the north side, and the multi-use trail on the. So on this section here, the current roadway width, I believe, is 42 feet. In order to do this, fit the trail in, we have to reallocate some of the space of the roadway, and then reduce the width of the roadway by about 6 feet. Okay, all right, so now continuing along Broad Street, we get to the intersection of Route 177 and Broad Street. This intersection here, the design includes maintaining the existing lane configurations and proposing a raised intersection. So at the approaches to the intersections, at the crosswalks, the intersection would be raised about 3 inches, and then the main proper of the intersection would remain flat. The intent of this raised intersection is to calm traffic and to reduce speeds. These raised intersections are very effective at reducing speeds in the realm of 5 to 7 miles per hour. So the purpose of this is to promote safety for all users at the intersection. So, we're going to have trail users crossing here and trail users crossing here. So we want to make sure that traffic speeds are reduced to the extent that we can, and that traffic is as calm with those trail crossings as feasible. As a result of this design, we are seeing some congestion reduction with some new signal equipment and optimization of the signal. After construction, in the future volumes, we're looking at about a 20 to 30 second intersection delay improvement, so some level of reduced congestion. All right, so now the trail then crosses Broad Street here and continues north along the west side, that's the east side of Route 177. Again, very similar design concept to Broad Street as presented before. So the design intent here again is to hold the back of sidewalk along the east side of the roadway and identically on the west side of the roadway as well. So in order to do that, again, we're seeing about a 6-foot reduction in the roadway width, where we'll now have 11-foot lanes and 2-foot shoulders, where now you're more seeing 12-foot lanes and 3 to 4-foot shoulders out there.
Right in front of your house.
All right, so now we're looking at Route 177. This is the existing condition facing northbound. And here's a rendering of the proposed trail and the lane and roadway reallocation facing north. So again, we have our 11-foot multi-use trail, grass buffer, and then our 2 travel lanes in each direction on Route 177. I'm just going to jump back a couple of slides here. So I want to point out here, because we're going to continue north, we do have a spur trail here that continues east toward the Plainville business area. But this is 7 North Washington Street. And then here's that business parking lot over here. So again, we're continuing north until we reach the project limits at Route 177. So Route 177, again, we're on North Washington Street. 2 lanes of travel in each direction. Sidewalk is primarily along only the east side of the roadway in this location. And again, the proposed design here has the trail following along the east side of the roadway heading northbound until we reach Bridge 1485. At this bridge structure, we will need to widen the structure about 5 feet, and that's needed in order to accommodate the existing lanes, 5-foot shoulders, and the multi-use trail section. Typical section on North Washington Street, very similar to what I kind of shown before. Again, we're looking at that 11-foot trail and 2 travel lanes in each direction. On the west side of the roadway there's no existing sidewalk. And then as we're getting through this curve here, one thing we'll have to do is slightly modify the alignment of that curvature there in order to maintain sight lines through the inside of the roadway there. So in this area here, we're starting to see a little bit more private property impact here on this lot. So here is Route 177, North Washington Street, facing north, existing condition. And here's a proposed rendering of how the trail will look when constructed, including the bridge widening and then the trail going over the bridge. All right, then continuing north still. So the trail will start to veer off of Route 177 towards the CSX rail line there. In order to do that, we'll need to gradually increase the grade of the trail in order to build a bridge over the CSX rail line. So the design here, as we start to taper away from Route 177, we'll be looking at an 11-foot trail, 2-foot snow shelves, and then our grading to establish our fill slopes to get us up to our bridge elevation. So once we get to the CSX rail, we'll be building about a 115-foot span bridge for the pedestrian crossings there, and then building the trail along the existing town access road or maintenance access road here. So we are pretty constricted at this location by the rail line to our south and the cemetery to our north. And so in order to have a gradual trail grade where we connect to our bridge and bring it back down to existing grade, we will be looking at having to build some sections of retaining wall on either side of the trail. So, along this access road, we're looking at a 12-foot trail with our 2-foot snow shelves, and then retaining walls on either side. And then kind of looking here, so now we're looking to the west. I just want to show you a rendering of the, so here's the existing condition, CSX rail facing west. And here's a proposed rendering of the trail bridge going over the railroad. Okay, so now we're continuing to the east and then heading north. We have existing conditions. We have West Cemetery here and the CSX Railroad just to the south. Again, the trail continues along that access road and then continues north through the woods until we tie into this section up here, which is our phase 2 trail alignment. Typical cross section for the trail through the woods. Again, we're looking at that 12-foot trail section, 2-foot shoulders, and additionally here we have some wetlands here that we'll be avoiding. In order to avoid those wetlands, we'll have to bench into the existing slope that's there, and that's why you see kind of this larger green area that kind of mirrors what we'll need to do as far as cutting into the woods here in order to build that bench that trail in. All right, so we've gone Farmington Canal Heritage Trail north to south, Norton Park to Route 72. So I'm going to kind of bring you guys back down south, and we're going to go back to the intersection of Washington Street and West Main Street, so the existing intersection here. So what we're looking to do is, we're building our north-south Farmington Canal Trail connection, but we also want to make sure that we're providing connection to the downtown Plainville area. So in order to do that, we're proposing a 10-foot wide spur trail along the south side of the roadway. I'll come back to that. So here's a cross section of how that would work on West Main Street. Again, it's similar design concepts to the other roadways where we need to reallocate the space of the actual roadway itself. I believe we're another 6-foot reduction in the footprint of the pavement of the roadway out here. Maintaining 11-foot lanes, 4-foot shoulders, 5-foot grass buffer, and then our 10-foot spur trail. Additionally, on the north side of the roadway, we'll be maintaining the existing sidewalk network that's there today. So along with this design here, the trail itself does start to extend beyond the sidewalk network that's there. We're seeing about a 1 to 2 foot, 1 to 2 feet of property acquisition beyond the existing sidewalk that's there today on Route 372. Coming back to the intersection here, I missed this graphic, but, one thing we want to do at the corner here is we want to, provide, some kind of indication that, hey, there's a connection here. We have our Farmington Canal Heritage Trail going north-south. We have our spur trail going east-west, and that's also going to tie into the New Britain Beeline Trail that's also going to go east-west through Plainville and eventually tie into New Britain. So, we have, what we're looking to do is really promote that connectivity. So one thing we're looking to do is at the southeast corner of Route 177 and 372 is, build some kind of community corner where we can provide event benches for rest areas or signage to promote the local businesses down the street. Okay, so then continuing to the west, eventually our trail terminates just to the east, terminates just east of Pierce Street here. So Pierce Street does present a unique situation or challenge there with the existing building face being right up against the sidewalk line. So we do have concerns with sight lines here. So in order to mitigate that safety concern with sight lines, we're looking to convert just the north end of Pierce Street into one-way traffic. So the remainder of Pierce Street down in this section would remain two-way traffic, and we'd have similar sort of a cul-de-sac here at this location. Additionally, one thing we need to consider here with that Pierce Street one-way conversion just at the north end is we have our fire department here. So we needed to make sure our design accommodated what we needed for fire truck turning movements to access Pierce Street and head south. So here we are on Route 372 Main Street facing east, existing condition. And here's a rendering of the proposed condition when constructed and built. Again, trail on this side of the roadway. Roadway, 2 lanes of travel, 4-foot shoulders, and then the existing sidewalk network on the north. Okay, so Steve had showed this slide in the beginning. The reason why I'm bringing it back up is just because to kind of show you, kind of circle back on these two alternatives from Norton Park connecting to Broad Street here. So I'm going to bring up some color plans to kind of show those designs and kind of walk you through what that would entail a little bit. So here we're looking at what we're referring to as the Hemingway Woods alignment. Starting point is very similar to what's proposed today with the connection at phase 1. However, we would be building likely a new bridge structure over the canal here, and then continuing north here until we get into the woods. Now, this area is wetland area, so we would likely be proposing a boardwalk structure through here. We're approximately about 1,000 feet. And then eventually tying out to Broad Street over here in the north, where we would then continue to the west and the east. And the design would be identical to what's been presented on the poster boards and in the slides earlier. So now looking at Route 177, this is the other alignment I wanted to present a color plan on. So again, this alignment proposes the trail coming from Norton Park, traveling east along the existing gravel path that's there along Norton Park Road, and then crossing the roadway, and the trail continuing north along the east side of the roadway. This would be similar design to Route 177 to the north. We'd be looking at an 11-foot trail section here, and then reducing the width of the roadway and providing 2 11-foot travel lanes and 2-foot shoulders. On the east side of the roadway, we'd be replacing the existing sidewalk that's there. Right, so that is what I have to present to you today. After your presentation today, we'll continue to have discussions. But right now, I'd like to have our right-of-way property agent here, Zach, and he'll kind of talk about the right-of-way process.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. Again, my name is Zach Carmino. I met a few of you already. So our office is responsible for acquiring the property rights that are needed for the project. You heard Bill mention a few of the impacts, but I'd like to give a brief overview of our acquisition process and what you can expect from the state if you're one of those impacted property owners. So all the property rights will be acquired in accordance with Connecticut General Statutes, sections 13A73 and 13A98E, as well as the Uniform Act. And just keep in mind that the impacts are still subject to change as the design progresses. So if you're one of the impacted property owners, we'll be meeting with you on site. We'll be able to explain the project so you don't have to remember everything you heard today. We'll be able to explain what we're proposing to do and the property rights that we're proposing to buy. We'll then present the property owner with a monetary offer for those property rights and give them time to consider and enter negotiations. If we can reach an agreement, then the state will handle the closing directly with the property owner, pay them. And if we're unable to come to an agreement, then the state will acquire the property rights through eminent domain, deposit the original offer amount in the court system, and the property owner would have 6 months from that date to file an appeal if they felt that the offer was inadequate. As Bill mentioned, we're going to be having a forum after the presentation, so if you are one of the impacted property owners, feel free to come talk to me after the presentation. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Steve. Thank you.
All right, so a few more issues to discuss. Some administrative things here, right? So Section 4F of the DOT Act of 1966 involves any use of basically parks, any town-owned, any land designated as a park, right? So it provides protection for parks, recreation areas, wildlife and waterfowl refuges, and also historic sites that are on the National Register or may be eligible for the National Register of Historic Places. It applies to all USDOT funded projects, in which this is one, and then privately or publicly owned historic sites of national, state, or local significance. So the construction of this trail and the alternatives we've seen does use part of Norton Park. In order for this to get through the 4F process, we have to coordinate with the town, document what those impacts are, and then that would all be approved by FHWA. And then basically the logic behind this is that there is no one steward of a park or recreational area. It's a community resource, and as such, there's no one person who's necessarily going to be coordinating, but it's a decision that goes to the town and FHWA. So project schedule, there could be an asterisk the size of the screen on this project schedule right here, but assuming an alignment is selected, and again, big asterisk, right? The final design plans could be completed as early as January 2028. The bid process to go to a contractor would begin May 3rd of 2028, and the anticipated construction start will be spring and summer 2028. We expect about a 2-year duration. And the cost of this work is $28 million. So as I mentioned early on in the presentation, we are here for comments. We are not here to convince you one way or another. We're here to present you with the design, solicit feedback, hopefully educate you, answer any of your questions, and then receive those comments. So there's a few ways you can do this. We have the QR code up here for that PIMA system, which is a form online. You can certainly submit comments. You can email us, again, this will all be on the website. Email us at dot109173plainville@ct.gov. You can also take phone calls, either at the general number, which is 594-2020. Any of the phone numbers you've received today or any of the numbers you see on the project staff, you can call us as well. Everything gets documented. The project webpage link is below. Quite frankly, the easiest way to search this would be to Google Plainville Phase 3. It's also on the DOT website. I'll also mention that everything that was discussed today verbally has been recorded as best we can. All those verbal comments go into a document that also gets submitted up as formal comments. So, everything we're hearing goes into this documentation, and that all gets submitted together. At the conclusion of the 2-week comment period, which is December 5th, we'll basically have these documents together. We'll set up a meeting with the town, show them what feedback we received, and discuss a path moving forward. So I just want to reiterate, this is not we are doing this, here's the design. This is an option that requires your feedback to have a fruitful conversation and discuss the best route forward. So again, here's the QR code for the website to submit comments. We will be here until 9 o'clock. We're going to break back out. Anyone with a DOT badge, you can submit your comments. There's also paper handouts up at the front. Hopefully all of you received them. If not, there are comments. And certainly comments in the email or phone. Again, I want to thank you all for coming out. We certainly understand the contentious nature of closing this gap in the trail. As I say for far too many of my jobs, if it was easy, we would have done it 20 years ago. So this is the process for us to get that feedback and to really hopefully find an alternative that can balance the constraints that we have in the area and hopefully provide a closer to that trail for all users. So again, thank you very much, and we'll be here for quite some time to receive any comments. Thank you.